Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. As you probably know, the Harry Potter fandom is divided into two camps. Some consider the movie adaptations to be wonderful, while others are not so thrilled due to the numerous cut scenes that, in their opinion, robbed the films of their special charm. In this video, I would like to share with you several amusing scenes from the books that didn't make it into the films for various reasons. Enjoy the video. Number 1. Molly Weasley forgot about Fred and George. Molly Weasley was always a very attentive mother, but one of her traits was somewhat overlooked in the films, her tendency to highlight the children who achieved greater success. For instance, when Ron received the prefect badge in the Order of the Phoenix, Molly proudly declared that being a prefect was a family tradition. However, Fred and George, upon hearing this, grumbled, "And what about us, Fred and George, just neighbours?" This humorous scene was left out of the films. Number 2. Dobby took all of Hermione's hats. In The Goblet of Fire, Hermione started knitting hats to help the house elves gain their freedom. However, it turned out that these hats were being taken by none other than Dobby, and all the elves, including other house elves in Gryffindor, simply refused to accept freedom. Hermione, thinking her plan was working, didn't even notice that she had actually just passed the job on to Dobby. The elf happily wore the hats on his head despite their useless purpose. Number 3. Ginny's jokes about Harry as tattoos. One of the weakest points in the adaptation was the portrayal of Harry and Ginny's relationship. In the books, their connection was more natural and filled with chemistry. In The Half-Blood Prince, Ginny joked that when asked about the hippogriff tattoo, she said it was a dragon to make Harry seem cooler. This funny scene was sorely missed in the movie. Number 4. Fred and George throwing snowballs at Voldemort. The films missed many humorous moments, such as the scene with Fred and George enchanting snowballs to follow Professor Quirrell and hit him in the turban. This episode in the book was funny and symbolized the playfulness of the twins, who weren't afraid to throw snowballs at one of the darkest wizards. Number 5. Mrs. Weasley as sweater jokes. In The Philosopher's Stone, Harry and Ron receive sweaters from Mrs. Weasley with their initials, but in the book, Fred and George also received their sweaters, but with different letters on them. This detail adds more humor to the scene when the twins make jokes. Quote 3 This joke was cut from the film. Number 6. Dumbledore scolded the Dursleys. The scene where Dumbledore visits the Dursleys in The Half-Blood Prince was not only epic, but also amusing. Not only did Dumbledore take Harry, but he also scolded his relatives. He enchanted the glasses to fly and knock Vernon on the head, while giving his criticism, all the while smiling. This moment was perfectly depicted in the book, but unfortunately, it was missing from the film. Number 7. Dumbledore pretended not to hear Harry. In The Goblet of Fire, Dumbledore easily parried Harry's reaction to Rita Skeeter's words, calling her some colourful names. Forgetting that he was in the presence of the headmaster, Harry uttered several vivid epithets toward her. Dumbledore pretended not to hear and said that he had temporarily gone deaf, adding a bit of humour and lightness to the atmosphere. Number 8. Archie, pyjamas at the Quidditch World Cup. One of the most amusing characters, albeit a brief presence in the books, is Archie, the elderly wizard from the Goblet of Fire during the Quidditch World Cup. Unfortunately, the films didn't give enough attention to the World Cup, and as a result, viewers missed out on a hilarious exchange. Archie refuses to wear Muggle clothes and instead proudly sports a bright red pajama. When another wizard notices and comments that muggles don't wear such attire in public, Archie calmly responds, "I bought it in a muggle shop. Muggles wear them. Women, by the way, also." This simple line, delivered by Archie with complete nonchalance, adds a wonderful touch of humour to the scene. The films missed a perfect opportunity to bring a smile to the audience. His face, showcasing the quirky and endearing nature of the magical world, his interactions with Muggle culture. Archie's playful defiance of conventional clothing norms was one of those charming moments that made the Quidditch World Cup feel truly magical and full of eccentric characters. Number 9, Percy's mashed potato incident. One of the funniest family moments in the books happens in The Goblet of Fire, where Fred and George Weasley tease their older brother Percy for his stuffy seriousness. Percy had recently taken a new position at the Ministry of Magic, and the twins couldn't resist poking fun at him. They joked about how Percy would stand in front of the mirror delivering speeches to himself, practicing his important reports. The image of Percy, so absorbed in his own self-importance, was enough to drive Fred and George into fits of laughter. Percy, of course, wasn't amused. In his fury, he threw a spoonful of mashed potatoes straight at the ceiling. The spoon didn't fall back down. Instead, it stuck there, suspended. The whole family erupted in laughter as Percy, now redder than ever, stormed out of the room in embarrassment. The spoon remained stuck in the ceiling, and Percy was beet red, the book describes, adding to the hilarity of the scene. The way Percy's anger backfired, turning into a comedy of errors, is a perfect example of the Weasley family dynamic. This moment was pure comedy, showcasing the playful banter that defined the Weasley siblings' relationships. Unfortunately, it was one of the many scenes left out of the films, depriving fans of a warm, light-hearted family moment. The films focused on the grander events, but the little, funny details like this one gave the books their charm. It was a perfect reminder of the Weasley family's love for each other, even if it came wrapped in a lot of teasing and laughter. Number 10. Hermione attacks Ron with birds. In The Half-Blood Prince, one of the more emotional yet comical scenes was completely omitted from the film. After witnessing Ron snogging Lavender Brown, Hermione, hurt and furious, sends a flock of enchanted birds after him. In the book, the scene is a mix of emotions and humour. Ron, desperately trying to defend himself, looks utterly ridiculous as the birds relentlessly attack him. Harry, trying not to laugh, watches the chaos unfold, amused by Ron's panic. Hermione, usually calm and composed, is so fierce in that moment that it's clear to everyone, don't mess with Hermione Granger when she's angry. The magical birds represent more than just her anger, they also show the depth of her hurt. Ron was swatting furiously at the birds, trying to protect himself, but they kept swooping at him, the book describes. Hermione's fury is almost palpable, and yet the absurdity of the situation makes it all the more comical. The contrast between her anger and the ridiculousness of Ron's predicament provides a moment of light-heartedness amid the emotional tension. Sadly, the films chose to focus only on Hermione's tears and her sadness, completely missing the irony and sharp humour of the moment. Instead of the magical birds, we are left with a sombre and rather one-dimensional portrayal of her heartbreak. The comedic aspect of Hermione's outburst and the ridiculous image of Ron being swarmed by enchanted birds is a key element that adds both humour and depth to their complex relationship. It's a scene fans still remember fondly, wishing it had been brought to life with the same sharp wit from the book. Number 11. Harry tries to convince McGonagall about Malfoy. In The Half-Blood Prince, one of the most entertaining moments was completely left out of the film, and it's a real shame. Harry, convinced that Draco Malfoy is now a Death Eater, tries to convince Professor McGonagall of his suspicions, but as usual, McGonagall isn't easily convinced. "Potter, I assume you are absolutely certain," she replies, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or have you perhaps decided that he enjoys being dramatic and mysterious?" This exchange perfectly captures McGonagall's sharp wit, something that was sorely missing in the films. Her ability to diffuse tension with just a few words was one of the things that made her such a standout character. She wasn't just a strict teacher, she had the perfect balance of humour and sarcasm, which brought some lightness to the otherwise tense atmosphere. When Harry is desperately trying to convince her of something serious, her quick, witty response shows her skepticism while also providing a bit of comic relief. The scene is particularly hilarious because of how absurd Harry's concerns seem in the moment. Draco Malfoy, dramatic as ever, had been acting suspicious, but to Harry, that was enough to jump to the conclusion that he was a Death Eater. McGonagall's response cuts through the drama, reminding Harry that not everything needs to be taken so seriously. It's a rare moment of levity in the midst of the brewing war, showing how McGonagall's sarcastic humour lightens the mood when everything else is so heavy. Sadly, this exchange was left out of the film, which felt like a missed opportunity to showcase McGonagall's personality and humour. The films often skipped over the little moments that made the characters feel real, and this witty interaction between Harry and McGonagall would have been a perfect way to balance the film, is darker themes with a touch of comic relief. It is these small details that fans still remember and cherish. Number 12. Peeves says goodbye to Umbridge. One of the biggest disappointments for fans was the complete omission of Peeves from the Harry Potter films. The mischievous poltergeist, always causing chaos at Hogwarts, was a constant source of humour and madness. His antics often provided the light-hearted moments that balanced the darker tones of the series. However, one of his most comical scenes was cut from the Order of the Phoenix movie, much to the disappointment of fans. In the book, after Fred and George Weasley's dramatic escape from Hogwarts, Peeves couldn't resist adding his own chaotic touch. As Dolores Umbridge stood in the school trying to regain control after the Weasley twins' exit, Peeves began to throw chalk at her, chanting loudly, "Oi, you great big old bat! Take that, you horrible old woman!" The whole school erupts in laughter, and the teachers, surprisingly, do nothing to stop him. It's one of those moments where Peeves shines as the uncontrollable force of mischief, bringing a sense of rebellion to Hogwarts. The scene is even more outrageous when you consider how Peeves openly mocks Umbridge, a character who was deeply unpopular among students and faculty alike. In the book, Peeves taunts her without fear, throwing his tiny rebellion in the face of a woman who thought she could control everything at Hogwarts. The whole school was laughing, Rowling writes, and the teachers were just standing there, unable to do anything. This created a unique sense of justice in the school, where even the most unruly and disruptive spirit in the castle could rebel against an oppressive authority figure like Umbridge. Unfortunately, this brilliant moment was missing from the film, depriving fans of one last laugh at Umbridge's expense. Peeves' antics were a crucial part of the chaotic spirit of Hogwarts, and without his presence, the film missed an important comedic release. Fans still talk about this scene, wishing they could have seen Peeves in action, reminding us of the fun and mischief that filled the magical school. Number 13, Ron meets the garden gnomes. In the Chamber of Secrets, one of the funniest and most chaotic moments in the book is when Harry and Ron are forced to deal with the mischievous gnomes in the Weasley garden. The film, unfortunately, skips over this hilariously awkward scene. The task seems simple at first. Grab the gnomes by their legs and spin them around until they fly over the fence, but the reality is far from smooth. These gnomes aren't your average magical creatures. They are tiny, stubborn, and surprisingly strong. The scene becomes even more absurd when one gnome grabs hold of Ron's finger and refuses to let go, screaming in delight. It's a moment of pure chaos as Ron tries to shake it off, but the gnome, clinging with all its might, is thoroughly enjoying itself. Meanwhile, Fred and George, with their usual dry humour, explain to Harry that gnomes are too simple to understand that they are being thrown away, and they will just return to the garden. "You've got to be cruel to be kind," Fred quips as he nonchalantly tosses another gnome over the fence. This little vignette, filled with laughter and the silly antics of magical creatures, adds to the charm of the Weasley family as magical, everyday life. It is a light-hearted, absurd moment that shows the fun side of magic. The book describes the gnomes as screeching and squirming, and their antics as something almost comical, a true test of patience for Ron and Harry. Yet in the film, this entire sequence was omitted, leaving a gap in the representation of how ordinary, chaotic, and humorous life could be at the Burrow. By cutting this scene, the film lost an opportunity to show the comedic side of magical living. It's these little humorous moments, like battling gnomes, that make the world of Harry Potter feel real. They ground the magic in everyday life, reminding us that even in a world full of wonders, mundane tasks like garden maintenance are still a challenge. The films could have truly showcased this magical absurdity, but instead they missed a chance to share one of the book's most light-hearted and fun moments. Number 14, Lockhart's Valentine's Day Chaos. Gilderoy Lockhart, without a doubt, is one of the most ridiculous and comical characters in the entire Harry Potter saga. He is so absurd that his eccentricities often steal the spotlight in any scene he's in. In the Chamber of Secrets, he takes his self-obsession to a new level by turning Hogwarts into a Valentine's Day wonderland. The halls are draped in pink ribbons and hearts, and even Cupid, his helpers, are hired to deliver valentines. The sight that feels more like a bizarre, over-the-top romance novel than the usual magical school setting. The real hilarity of this moment comes when a tiny, furious Cupid catches Harry in a corridor. The little creature starts loudly reciting poems about Harry's green eyes and hair the colour of a raven's wing. Harry, mortified, wishes he could vanish into the floor. His embarrassment is only made worse by Draco Malfoy, who stands by laughing at Harry's misfortune. The whole scene is a perfect blend of awkwardness and humour, something that captures Lockhart's utterly misguided sense of romance. Unfortunately, the films completely missed out on this moment, leaving fans without one of the funniest and most cringe-worthy episodes in the book. It was the kind of comedy that only Lockhart, with his inflated ego and lack of self-awareness, could create. In the book, the moment is described with such sharp wit that you can almost feel Harry's discomfort. Quote, 14. The text says, perfectly capturing the awkwardness of the situation. The absence of this scene in the films felt like a lost opportunity to showcase Lockhart's ridiculousness in all its glory, his attempt to romanticize a school day, his complete disregard for how his actions affect others, and the resulting chaos were all key elements that made this scene unforgettable for fans. The books were filled with such moments that gave the story a humorous depth, and this one with the tiny Cupid was a prime example. Number 15, Fred and George experiment on first years. In the world of Harry Potter, few characters are as loved for their wit and charm as Fred and George Weasley. These two mischievous twins not only provided comic relief throughout J.K. Rowling's series, but also became a symbol of youthful rebellion against authority. One of the aspects of their personalities that the films missed out on, however, is their notorious habit of experimenting on younger students. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Fred and George's magical inventions were more than just tools for pranking. They were their way of helping younger students skip classes or avoid the monotony of Hogwarts life. They took great delight in testing their latest products on the unsuspecting first years, often in the most absurd and humorous ways. This particular tradition of theirs is one of the more humorous and audacious acts that the films, unfortunately, chose not to include. In the book, Fred and George had created a variety of magical sweets, and each candy had a unique and unpredictable effect on the consumer. The twins weren't just handing out ordinary candy, they had designed sweets that would cause such symptoms as nosebleeds, nausea, and even fever. Their intent was clear. These candies were perfect for tricking younger students into feigning illness so that they could skip lessons. It was the kind of prank that only a pair of audacious and imaginative troublemakers could come up with, and it was presented with a flair of humor that made it both hilarious and, in its own way, a bit touching. One of the funniest parts of this little subplot came when Fred and George eagerly offered these candies to the first years, delighting in the chaos that would inevitably ensue. Of course, the twins weren't malicious. They were simply using their inventions as a way to inject a little fun into the otherwise stifling atmosphere of Hogwarts, where the pressures of academic life could be overwhelming. The idea of giving young students the chance to skip classes, albeit through dubious means, reflected their characteristic disregard for authority and rules. For Fred and George, life at Hogwarts was about creating their own fun, even if it came at the expense of the school's rigid structure. Hermione Granger, always the voice of reason and discipline, was predictably appalled by the twins' antics. She was horrified by the idea that younger students could be duped into taking these questionable sweets, and her sense of moral outrage was palpable. Hermione's disapproval of the prank was clear, especially as she tried to convince the twins that their actions were irresponsible. Her reaction was a perfect counterpoint to Fred and George's playful nonchalance, emphasizing the clash between their carefree attitude and her sense of duty and responsibility. Hermione, ever the rule follower, could hardly fathom how anyone would willingly flout the rules in such a careless manner. On the other hand, Ron Weasley, who had always been in awe of his older brothers, was absolutely delighted by their ingenuity. He found their prank both hilarious and impressive, admiring their ability to come up with such creative ways to disrupt the tedium of Hogwarts life. Ron, who had grown up with Fred and George, was no stranger to their tricks and schemes, and it was clear that he found their latest invention to be yet another example of their brilliance. For him, their magical sweets represented a sort of freedom, a rebellion against the often stifling nature of their education, and he couldn't help but admire their courage in pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable. The true comedic genius of this scene, however, lay in the way Fred and George interacted with Hermione. As always, the twins were playful, teasing Hermione about her righteous indignation. They knew exactly how to get under her skin and weren't above suggesting that she might want to be their next voluntary tester for their new candy line. The scene was full of light-hearted banter and mischief, with the twins trying to tempt Hermione into trying the sweets for herself, knowing that she would never fall for such a trick. This playful exchange was one of the many instances in the books where the twins' sense of humor was both mischievous and endearing. It was a reminder that despite their wild antics, Fred and George were still grounded in their affection for their friends and family, even if they often expressed it in unconventional ways. In contrast to the films, where Fred and George's personalities are somewhat toned down, this scene in the book perfectly encapsulated the essence of who they were, two inventive and mischievous young men who revelled in the joy of trickery and humour. The films, unfortunately, missed out on this aspect of their characters. The comic relief that the twins provided was one of the highlights of the books, and their constant push against authority was a recurring theme throughout the series. This particular moment, with its clever candy inventions and the way they tested them on first years, was a perfect reflection of their ability to combine fun with a sense of rebellion. It would have been a welcome addition to the film series, adding another layer of charm and humour to the Weasley twins' already beloved characters. Number 16. Snape in Neville's grandmother's clothes. The moment was supposed to be one of ordinary magical instruction, but for Neville Longbottom it became an unexpected turning point in his life. In the book Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, J.K. Rowling gives readers one of the funniest and most memorable scenes, but unfortunately, it's a scene that did not make its way to the film adaptation. In this particular moment, Professor Remus Lupin is teaching his students how to deal with boggarts, magical creatures that take on the form of their victim's greatest fear. The boggart's power lies not just in the transformation it undergoes, but also in how it plays on the deepest insecurities of the person it confronts. However, the transformation that Neville's boggart takes is one of the most laugh-out-loud moments in the entire series. When Neville steps forward, trembling but determined, the boggart quickly assumes the form of Professor Severus Snape. However, this is no ordinary Snape. The boggart, a creature capable of wreaking havoc on a person's mind, has a different kind of fun in store for Neville. Rather than morphing into the intimidating, towering figure of Snape, as he would normally appear to the students, the boggart sees fit to dress the dreaded professor in something that would render even the most terrifying individual utterly ridiculous. It isn't just any dress, it is Neville's grandmother's dress, complete with a large feathery hat and a bizarre handbag. The absurdity of the situation leaves the class in fits of uncontrollable laughter, and for the first time in his Hogwarts career, Neville Longbottom feels a surge of pride, as if he is the hero of the class. This sudden transformation, this shift from fear to comedy, not only disarms the boggart, but gives Neville the confidence he so desperately lacked before. This scene, so rich in humour and lightness, was a standout moment in the book. It speaks to the magic of Harry Potter, a series that, despite its darker themes and more somber moments, never shied away from the joy of laughter. In this case, the laughter is shared by the entire class, a group of young witches and wizards who have seen and experienced their own fears, but are now united in the ridiculousness of Snape wearing such a comically inappropriate outfit. The laughter isn't just about how ridiculous Snape looks in the dress, it's also about the shift in power dynamics. For Neville, the timid and often bullied student, a transformative moment. It marks the first time that he can stand tall and feel that he has the upper hand, at least for a fleeting moment. It's as if the boggart has not just made Snape foolish, but also made Neville, in that moment, a figure of triumph. While the film version of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban chose to include a moment with Snape appearing in a ridiculous costume, something that does not quite capture the full humour of the scene, the choice to omit the details of Neville's grandmother's dress was an unfortunate loss. What was most brilliant about this moment in the book was not just the image of Snape in a dress, but the added absurdity of his bizarre accessories. In the book, the dress wasn't just any ordinary piece of clothing, it was specifically described as belonging to Neville's grandmother, a lady of questionable fashion taste. The enormous hat, the stuffed vulture perched on top, and the impossibly small, incongruent handbag all contributed to the visual chaos. Snape, a man whose very presence inspired dread in the hearts of his students, was reduced to a sight that evoked nothing but ridicule. This visual chaos was something the film struggled to replicate. The movie version of Snape in a silly costume, though humorous, felt much less exaggerated and did not have the same level of depth. In the book, Neville's boggart forces the students and the readers to examine how something as fearsome as Snape can be rendered comical through the use of absurdity. It also subtly highlights one of the key themes of the series, the power of perspective. In the wizarding world, even a boggart, something inherently terrifying, can be transformed into something laughable if one approaches it with the right mindset. It's not enough to simply face the boggart, one must be able to laugh in the face of fear. Neville's bravery in this moment is what truly sets him apart. As the boggart takes the form of Snape, Neville musters the courage to speak the incantation ridiculous, and by doing so, he turns the terrifying image of Snape into something completely ludicrous. But it's not just the incantation that works its magic, Neville's willingness to confront his fears in a way that the other students had yet to fully grasp. The true humour of this scene lies not only in the image of Snape, his ridiculous appearance, but in Neville's newfound confidence. He is no longer the scared, nervous boy who would shrink in the shadows. Instead, he stands tall, proud of his accomplishment. For Neville, it's an emotional and transformative moment, one that builds his character arc and foreshadows his eventual rise as a hero in the final book. This scene, though funny in its own right, serves a larger purpose within the narrative. It's a clear moment of growth for Neville, and it's an important stepping stone in his journey. Throughout the Harry Potter series, Neville is often the underdog, constantly overshadowed by his more confident peers, particularly Harry and Hermione. His successes, though numerous, are often overlooked or overshadowed by his more famous friends. Yet it is moments like this one where Neville stands out for his bravery that demonstrate the true essence of courage. Unlike Harry, who is thrust into the spotlight as the chosen one, Neville's bravery is quiet and humble. He doesn't seek attention, but he rises to the occasion when it matters most. Number 17, Harry, his first meeting with Luna. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, one of the most memorable moments, though not captured in the film, happens during the first encounter between Harry Potter and Luna Lovegood on the Hogwarts Express. The scene is a delightful representation of Luna's unique eccentricity and her ability to turn the ordinary into something extraordinary, filled with both charm and a sense of humor. It stands out not just for its comedy, but for the way it introduces Luna as a character who embraces the bizarre without a hint of self-consciousness, all while giving Harry a moment of bewilderment that highlights his own youth and confusion. The setting is familiar. The Hogwarts Express is making its way to the castle, and Harry, along with Ron and Hermione, are sitting together. A typical moment before the adventure and danger of a new school year begin. This is when Luna first makes her appearance. She enters the compartment with an air of quiet confidence that seems almost out of place amidst the noisy chatter of the other students. However, it's not her entrance that catches Harry's attention. No, it's what she's doing that instantly sets her apart from everyone else. Luna is sitting there casually reading a magazine upside down. It's a strange behavior, one that makes Harry blink in disbelief. Most people, when faced with such an oddity, would either comment on it or offer some form of polite amusement. But Luna doesn't bat an eye. She doesn't seem to realize or care that what she's doing is unconventional. The scene is absurd in its normalcy, an example of Luna's effortless embrace of the peculiar, and it's made even more comical by the fact that no one seems able to react appropriately. Harry, as usual, is left confused and unsure of how to respond. He has faced dark wizards, witnessed his godfather's death, and dealt with the constant looming presence of Lord Voldemort's return. But Luna's antics throw him off in a completely different way. It's not danger that makes him uneasy in this instance, but the quiet absurdity of the moment. What can you say to someone who is so completely at ease with their own weirdness that they do things like reading upside down without any recognition of it being odd? As Luna continues her nonchalant reading, the situation only becomes more bizarre. Nerves that were already on edge among the students, especially in light of the growing dark presence in the wizarding world, become further complicated by Luna's personality. In the book, it's mentioned that Neville is frantically searching for a frog that has escaped, another odd, almost comic layer to the scene. He's looking around under the seats, muttering to himself, completely oblivious to Luna's strangeness. Meanwhile, Ginny, who is always a voice of reason among her peers, tries to explain Luna's peculiarities to Harry. However, the more she speaks, the more Harry's confusion grows. It's as if Luna operates in a world of her own, one that no one else quite understands. But it's when Luna speaks to Harry directly that the full comedic impact of the moment hits. Without skipping a beat, she tells Harry that she knows he isn't crazy because she, too, can see the thestrals. To someone who isn't used to Luna's calm demeanor, this statement feels utterly surreal. Harry, who has never met someone so nonchalantly confident about the bizarre, is left speechless. The scene is funny because it flips the conventional expectation of how people should behave. Luna doesn't present herself as an oddball for others to tolerate. Instead, she is entirely unfazed by the fact that she lives in a world where thestrals, creatures that can only be seen by those who have witnessed death, are simply a normal part of her reality. This moment of her calmly acknowledging the Thestrals is a beautiful piece of character development. It shows Luna's acceptance of the world as it is, no matter how strange it may seem. Her calm demeanor as she discusses seeing these creatures marked her as someone who doesn't feel the need to explain herself or justify her reality to others. In Luna's eyes, seeing the Thestrals is no more peculiar than reading a magazine upside down. It's just something that happens. But it is the contrast between Luna's utter calm and Harry's complete confusion that provides the comedic core of this scene. Harry, who has spent so much of his life grappling with the mystical and dark forces of the wizarding world, finds himself unable to process Luna's quiet confidence. His inability to grasp the simplicity with which Luna accepts what others might find extraordinary speaks volumes about his character and his journey. While Harry has fought against forces that defy belief, Luna accepts the unbelievable with ease, finding no need to question or explain it. It's this difference in perspective that adds such depth to their first meeting and why the scene is so wonderfully funny. What the film adaptation misses in this scene is the way it subtly layers humor with character development. The absurdity of Luna reading upside down and Harry's bemused silence Oren just for laughs. They serve as an introduction to her worldview, one that blends a carefree acceptance of the bizarre with an unshakable belief in what others would call impossible. This makes Luna a character unlike any other in the series, someone whose eccentricities are not to be mocked, but to be admired. The humor isn't in making fun of Luna, but in the sheer absurdity of how normal she finds her own strangeness. Number 18, Ron's manly gift for Hermione. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the fourth book in J.K., Rowling's iconic series, there's a moment that many readers fondly recall, though it never made its way to the big screen. This particular scene is both hilarious and telling of the awkwardness that defined Ron Weasley's character, especially in his interactions with Hermione Granger. Ron's attempt at gift-giving during the Christmas holiday becomes a moment of comedy and discomfort, but also a subtle commentary on the complexity of their relationships. The scene is a shining example of how small, humorous moments in the books contribute to the rich, layered storytelling that was, unfortunately, left behind in the film adaptations. The scene in question occurs when the students at Hogwarts are preparing for Christmas, and the trio, Ron, Hermione, and Harry, are exchanging gifts. Ron, in an attempt to impress Hermione, purchases a gift for her, but his choice is an oddly specific and poorly considered one. He presents her with a bottle of cologne titled, quote, 24. The gift is, to put it bluntly, a disaster. In his usual awkward fashion, Ron had no idea what to buy, so he defaulted to something he assumed might be a, unquote, 26th option, even if it was completely out of place for Hermione. The bottle itself, with its vague title, could not have been more of a misfire in showing any understanding of what Hermione might want or need. When Hermione opens the gift, she looks at it with confusion. She is polite, of course, but there's no mistaking her surprise. It's clear she doesn't quite know how to react, and the situation is made all the more awkward by the fact that Ron doesn't understand why the gift is so mismatched with who she is. Ron's own discomfort is palpable as he desperately tries to save face, not realizing how out of touch he is with Hermione's tastes. The whole moment is dripping with the kind of teenage awkwardness that so many readers have experienced, making it relatable and all the more hilarious. There's a subtle charm to Ron's attempt, even if it falls flat because it's so endearingly naive. Harry, who is quietly observing the exchange, struggles to suppress his laughter. Harry's amusement at the situation is one of the funniest aspects of the scene. He, of course, recognizes the absurdity of the gift, but also understands the larger context of Ron's character. Ron's actions, as much as they may seem foolish, are a result of his deep, though often unacknowledged feelings for Hermione. His awkwardness, while sometimes frustrating, makes him relatable and human. In this instance, he tries to do something nice, but his inexperience with romantic gestures leads to a comical failure. The moment is also made all the more amusing by the fact that Ron is still oblivious to his own feelings for Hermione. At this point in the series, Ron has yet to fully recognize his affection for her. He is still very much a teenager, trying to navigate the complexity of friendship, loyalty, and his emerging feelings for Hermione. His choice of gift reflects this. While Ron might have been trying to choose something, quote 27 or quote 28 for a girl, it reveals how little he understands what Hermione actually values. In hindsight, it's easy to see how this scene foreshadows the eventual development of their romantic relationship, but at the time it serves as a comical and awkward insight into their dynamic. The humor in this scene is compounded by the fact that it occurs within a larger context of Christmas gift-giving, which is a significant moment in the book. For Harry, the holidays are a welcome break from the pressures of school and the dark forces at play in the wizarding world. For Hermione, Christmas is a time to connect with her friends, though she is often more concerned with her studies than with the trappings of holiday cheer. The exchange of gifts in the book symbolizes a moment of care and friendship, but Ron, as choice of gift, injects an element of reality into the scene. It's not just about grand gestures or perfect presents, it's also about the small, sometimes awkward, but ultimately heartfelt attempts we make to show that we care. What makes the moment even funnier is the way Ron's embarrassment compounds. He watches Hermione's reaction with a mix of anxiety and confusion, unsure of what went wrong. His internal monologue is a storm of self-doubt. Why didn't she like the gift? Was it not manly enough? Did he pick something too muggle? His overthinking only adds to the humor of the situation, especially when he remains oblivious to the fact that his problem wasn't the one, quote 30 of the gift, but rather the fact that he was completely missing the mark with Hermione's preferences. It's a moment that many people can relate to, having experienced the awkwardness of giving a gift that doesn't quite hit the right note. The scene is also an excellent example of how J.K. Rowling uses small, comedic moments to deepen the reader understanding of the characters. Ron is a well-meaning, loyal, and brave friend, but he is also deeply flawed. His flaws often come out in the form of awkwardness, jealousy, and impulsiveness. These traits make him a richly human character, and his interactions with Hermione are an ongoing exploration of friendship and unspoken affection. This moment, in particular, illustrates just how much Ron still has to learn, both about relationships and about himself. While the films do a great job of capturing the grander moments of the series, they often miss out on the smaller, more intimate exchanges that define the characters' personalities. The omission of Ron's disastrous gift-giving in The Goblet of Fire is a perfect example of how the movies, in their attempt to streamline the narrative, sometimes lose the subtle, everyday humour that gives the books their heart. In a movie that was already packed with action, drama, and high-stakes moments, it is easy to see why this scene was left out. But for fans of the books, the humour in this moment adds a layer of depth to Ron, as character that is hard to replicate in a 2-hour film. For those who love the humorous side of the Harry Potter series, this scene is a goldmine. It's a moment that highlights the awkwardness of growing up, the missteps we take when trying to impress someone we like, and the genuine affection that underpins even the most awkward of situations. It's the kind of comedy that comes from the everyday, the small moments that don't need a grand stage to be funny. Ron's awkward attempt at gift-giving is a microcosm of the entire series' ability to blend humour with the more serious themes of love, loyalty, and growing up. In the larger context of the series, this scene also functions as a turning point for Ron and Hermione's relationship. It's clear that Ron cares deeply for her, though he has yet to articulate it. It's a moment of tenderness that comes from a place of vulnerability, even if it is dressed up in the form of a poorly chosen cologne. The awkwardness of the gift only emphasizes how difficult it can be to express feelings, particularly when those feelings are still developing. Ultimately, Ron, as essence of Muggle manliness, is not just a funny moment. It's a window into the heart of his character. It shows us that even when Ron tries and fails, he is still trying, and that effort speaks volumes about his loyalty to Hermione. It's a small, funny moment, but it's also one that reflects the growth and evolution of Ron's character over the course of the series. And while it may not have made it into the films, it remains one of the most cherished, hilarious, and human moments in the books. Number 19. Colin Creevy's magical photo fail. In the magical world of Harry Potter, there are numerous characters who bring joy, humour, and charm to the pages. Among them, Colin Creevy stands out as one of the most enthusiastic and innocent characters, providing some of the series' funniest moments. A devoted fan of Harry Potter, Colin, its adoration takes a somewhat extreme turn, but it is his unrelenting excitement and unwavering fandom that adds so much light-heartedness to the darker themes of the books. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Colin is introduced as a young boy with a camera, always eager to capture Harry in the most ridiculous yet endearing ways possible. One of the most memorable scenes that illustrates Colin his fanaticism comes when he follows Harry around, taking pictures in every conceivable situation. Whether Harry is eating, standing, or simply walking down a corridor, Colin is there, his camera snapping away at every opportunity. The absurdity of these moments adds an element of humour that contrasts with the often grim atmosphere at Hogwarts. Colin's actions, though slightly intrusive, are not meant to be malicious. They are purely driven by his awe and admiration for Harry, whom he sees as a living legend. This fascination reaches its peak when Colin attempts to develop a photograph of Harry, which he intends to hang proudly on his wall. In a desperate attempt to preserve his hero's image, Colin envisions a magical photograph, one that would move just like the ones in the wizarding world. However, in a hilarious twist, the photograph fails to move because Colin is using a Muggle camera, one that cannot produce magical images. His disbelief and frustration are palpable as he stares at the lifeless picture, struggling to comprehend why his snapshot of Harry is not behaving as it should. The comedy in this scene lies not only in Colin, as exaggerated disappointment, but also in the contrast between his expectations and reality. As a Muggle-born student in a magical world, Colin doesn't fully grasp the intricacies of wizarding technology. The fact that a simple camera can, to replicate the magic of wizarding photographs, provides a delightful moment of humour. Colin's deep immersion into his fandom blinds him to the mundane nature of the Muggle world, creating a stark contrast between the magical and non-magical worlds. The humour is intensified by the way this scene is written. Colin's enthusiasm, while overwhelming, is entirely innocent. His single-minded determination to make Harry a star on his bedroom wall highlights his youthful naivety and genuine admiration. When he discovers that his photograph doesn't move, it's not a scene of despair, but of a comically exaggerated reaction to something entirely within his control, but outside his understanding. The disappointment is so over the top that it becomes endearing rather than frustrating. The scene, though light-hearted, also adds depth to Colin's character. His actions are not just the result of a fan's obsession, but a reflection of his deep-rooted admiration for Harry, who has become a symbol of bravery and hope for many at Hogwarts. For Colin, Harry is not just a celebrity or a famous student, he is a hero. In many ways, this scene captures the innocence of fandom, where the idolization of a person can be so intense that even the simplest of their actions, such as eating or standing, becomes worthy of preservation in a photograph. In the movie adaptation of The Chamber of Secrets, however, this particular scene is not included. The film presents Colin in a much more abbreviated fashion, with only brief glimpses of his camera-wielding enthusiasm. While the movie certainly captures Colin's exuberance, it misses out on the delightful comedy and character development that his photo obsession brings in the book. The subtle humour and the deeper commentary on fandom and the nature of celebrity are sacrificed in favour of pacing and more action-oriented scenes. The film's decision to cut this moment is understandable in the context of adapting a novel to screen, but it leaves out a key moment that reveals so much about Colin, his innocence and devotion. By omitting this moment, the filmmakers also lose an opportunity to explore the more whimsical aspects of the wizarding world. The idea that magical photographs with their moving images are a standard part of life at Hogwarts is fascinating, and Colin's attempt to apply that magic to a Muggle camera creates a delightful point of conflict between the two worlds. This small detail provides a whimsical touch that further enriches the world J.K. Rowling created, demonstrating the magical world's superiority over the mundane one. Colin's failure to understand this difference is both comic and heartwarming, a moment of childlike innocence that allows the reader to laugh at the absurdity without mocking him. The scene also speaks to the underlying themes of fandom and the idea of heroes in our lives. Colin's obsession with Harry is not just about fame, it is a reflection of the way people in the real world idolize celebrities or public figures. For Colin, Harry represents everything good and brave in the world, an embodiment of hope, courage, and selflessness. His attempt to preserve Harry's image in a way that reflects the magical nature of the wizarding world is his way of holding on to that ideal. It's a testament to how fandom can transcend the ordinary, turning everyday moments into something worthy of admiration. While the scene is humorous, it also emphasizes how quickly Harry is thrust into a world of fame that he doesn't always understand or appreciate. Colin's obsession with him is just one example of how the world around Harry constantly places him on a pedestal. Despite his reluctance to be seen as a hero, Harry cannot escape the adoration of those around him, even if it manifests in silly moments like Colin's attempt to create a moving photograph. This is a poignant contrast to the deeper struggles Harry faces throughout the series, where he often wishes for a life of normalcy, free from the expectations placed on him. The significance of this scene also lies in the way it highlights the charm of the earlier Harry Potter books. In The Chamber of Secrets, the stakes are still relatively low compared to the later books, where darker themes dominate. Scenes like Colin's photographic obsession provide a light-hearted reprieve from the darker moments of the story. These humorous episodes give the series a sense of balance, ensuring that the readers remain engaged without becoming overwhelmed by the heaviness of the plot. In Colin's quest to make Harry a star, there's a sense of childlike wonder that resonates with readers, especially younger ones. His enthusiasm, though excessive, is rooted in a pure admiration for someone he sees as a hero. The disappointment when his photograph fails to live up to his expectations is a moment of innocent humor, but it also serves as a reminder of how our idols can sometimes be just, ordinary people capable of disappointing us in ways we might not always expect. Ultimately, Colin's attempt to make Harry a star in his own little world is a beautiful, funny, and poignant moment in the Harry Potter series. It reveals the innocence of youth, the depth of fandom, and the often comical ways in which we view the world through the lens of hero worship. In the book, this scene becomes a delightful break from the tension of the plot, reminding readers that even in a world filled with magic, there are still moments of simple, human humor. Number 20. Ron grows tentacles on his face. In Beatle quote 38. There is a scene that, while amusing in its magical absurdity, never quite made it to the big screen, and it's one of those moments that fans of the books have cherished and discussed in great detail. It's a scene involving Ron Weasley, whose tendency to act impulsively leads to a rather unfortunate yet undeniably hilarious magical mishap. During a potion-making lesson with Professor Slughorn, Ron's lack of attention to detail results in a spectacular explosion of his own making, and what follows is one of the most comical, bizarre, and oddly sympathetic visual moments in the entire series. The scene unfolds in Slughorn's classroom, where the students are tasked with brewing a complex potion, as is often the case in their potions lessons. The task is set up with the usual mix of magic, concentration, and care, which Ron, unfortunately, is not prepared for. His famous clumsiness and a dash of teenage distraction combine in a perfect storm. As always, the instructions are clear, but Ron, ever the optimist, believes he can follow them without too much effort, perhaps due to overconfidence, or maybe it just because he is desperate to keep up with his friends Harry and Hermione. Either way, things do not go as planned. Without consulting the recipe, Ron combines the wrong ingredients in his potion and chaos ensues. It's not a small mistake. Ron's potion erupts with such force that it sends a cloud of smoke and vapor into the air, enveloping his face in a thick, noxious mist. But it's not just the explosion that's memorable. What happens next is the real punchline. Out of nowhere, and as if the potion had taken a mind of its own, two strange, rubbery tentacles emerge from Ron's forehead and neck. The sight of these monstrous appendages curling and wriggling reminiscent of an octopus's limbs is so absurd that it immediately sends the class into a state of stunned silence before erupting into uncontrollable laughter. Even Harry, whose first instinct is often to help his friends, is at a loss for what to do. He's unsure whether to laugh or to rush to get help for Ron, whose face is now the unsettling sight of a magical accident gone terribly wrong. Harry's confusion only adds to the scene's charm as he watches his friend in this strange new state. Even in the midst of Ron's distress, the absurdity of the moment is too much to ignore. Ron, with his tentacles flailing, can it seem to stop the twitching of his new appendages, which only makes him look even more ridiculous. But perhaps the most memorable part of the scene is the reaction of Professor Slughorn, the usually jovial and lenient teacher. Known for his love of his students and his tendency to pamper them, Slughorn can't help but laugh. And it is a laugh that's as much of a surprise as it is a relief. In the books, Slughorn is often portrayed as a man who is a bit more concerned with maintaining his image and relationships than genuinely caring about his students' well-being. But in this moment, even he cannot help but give in to the absurdity. It is a rare sight in the world of potions, where precision is everything and failure is often met with cold reprimands. But Slughorn, for once, lets his guard down, caught up in the humour of the situation, which gives the reader a brief but welcome glimpse into his more human side. The tentacles themselves are an unlikely, yet iconic, part of the moment. They are not only a physical manifestation of Ron's magical misstep, but they also carry a layer of visual absurdity that heightens the humour of the scene. They seem to have a life of their own, almost as if they are mocking Ron's attempt at potions mastery. The very idea of a wizard growing octopus-like tentacles because of a failed potion is the type of chaotic magic that makes the world of Harry Potter so enchanting and unpredictable. Ron, always trying so hard to be competent, especially when surrounded by the exceptionally talented Harry and Hermione, now finds himself as the unwitting subject of magical ridicule. It's a moment of vulnerability for him, but also one that's universally relatable. Everyone has had those moments where things go completely wrong, and you have no choice but to laugh at yourself. This scene also highlights something essential about Ron's character. While he often struggles to keep up with the brilliance of his friends, he has an undeniable charm and ability to bring lightness into even the most serious situations. His magical mishap, in a strange way, mirrors his role within the trio. While Harry is the hero and Hermione the intellectual force, Ron is the heart of the group, often clumsy, but always there to support and make others laugh when things get tough. In many ways, this scene is a testament to the unsung heroism of Ron. Even when he's the subject of the joke, he still stands firm, his usual quick wit and self-deprecating humour intact. The lack of this scene in the movie adaptation of The Half-Blood Prince feels like a missed opportunity for a few reasons. First, it would have been a perfect moment for the film to embrace the light-hearted, humorous side of the books, which often provides relief from the darker elements of the story. With the overall tone of the movie focusing more on the growing tensions in the wizarding world and the increasing threats of Voldemort's return, a moment of absurdity like Ron, as potion disaster, could have offered a much-needed comedic break. It would also have reinforced the theme of growing up and learning from mistakes, something that is central to the entire series. Ron, after all, is constantly trying to prove himself, and a scene where he fails but also laughs at himself would have been a great way to emphasize his character growth. In addition, the tentacle incident would have been a perfect visual gag, not just for fans of the books, but for moviegoers who may have missed some of the more whimsical aspects of the Harry Potter universe. It's these moments of magical chaos where the rules of the wizarding world get hilariously bent and broken that help to make the books so endearing. By omitting this scene, the film lost an opportunity to showcase the full spectrum of magic, both its wonder and its chaos. In the grand scheme of the plot, Ron as tentacle disaster might seem trivial. It's not a life or death moment, nor does it advance the central plot of the fight against Voldemort, but that is precisely why it is so effective. It's one of those moments that humanizes the characters, showing them not just as warriors in the fight between good and evil, but as regular people navigating their adolescence in a world where magic is anything but predictable. Ron's tentacle moment is emblematic of the type of magic that makes Harry Potter so beloved. Magic that doesn't always go according to plan, magic that can be funny, unpredictable, and even a bit dangerous. It is not just about casting spells to defeat enemies or save lives. It's about the everyday magic that shapes the lives of those who live in that world. And in this moment, that magic is a little bit silly, a little bit chaotic, but ultimately very human. This is why it remains such a memorable, cherished moment from the books, and why, despite its absence from the films, it continues to live on in the hearts of fans. Number 21, Moaning. Myrtle flirts with Harry in the bath. In the world of Harry Potter, humour often lies hidden in the most unexpected places, and one of the funniest scenes in the books, though not fully captured in the films, takes place with the ever-melancholic and attention-seeking ghost, Moaning Myrtle. She was a character that seemed to revel in sadness, but she had an entirely different side that made her one of the most amusing figures in J.K. Rowling's magical universe. This particular scene, featuring Myrtle's infatuation with Harry, was a charming, albeit slightly awkward moment that reflected the light-hearted, sometimes absurd, nature of the wizarding world. In the book, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry, having completed one of the many difficult tasks of the Triwizard Tournament, finds himself needing to enter the prefect's bathroom for a moment of respite. It is here that Myrtle, the ghostly presence haunting the bathroom, makes her approach. At first glance, Myrtle's presence seems innocent enough. She is simply a lonely ghost wallowing in her eternal sorrow, muttering about her untimely death. However, this scene becomes anything but ordinary when Myrtle, of all characters, turns the tables on Harry and enters a decidedly flirtatious mode, one that the film adaptation chose to leave behind. Harry, for all his courage in facing dragons and dark wizards, was completely unprepared for the strange attention Myrtle begins to shower upon him. While in the bathroom, she follows him closely, sighing and commenting on how handsome he is. To any ordinary person, Myrtle's behavior might have seemed peculiar, but Harry, feeling extremely uncomfortable in this situation, simply tried to ignore her advances. The ghost's behavior, however, was relentless. What made this scene so humorous was Myrtle's complete lack of awareness of how awkward her infatuation made Harry feel. She was, after all, a ghost, someone who had been dead for decades. Her yearning for attention, combined with her inability to comprehend Harry's discomfort, created a juxtaposition that was absurdly funny. She wasn't a typical schoolgirl crushing on a boy. She was a ghost, stuck in an eternal adolescence, unable to move on from her school days, and entirely unaware that her advances were utterly out of place. The ghost's obsession with Harry is both hilarious and pitiful at the same time, making it one of the most bizarre and funny moments in the book. In the book, Myrtle is not merely the tragic figure she appears to be in the films. Yes, she has a history of being a somewhat sorrowful character, but this chapter unveils a new side of her that brings the humour to the forefront. She comments, in a rather childishly flirtatious tone, that she might spy on students in the bathroom, particularly those who caught her interest. This comment, though it might sound eerie or even creepy, becomes funny simply because of the way it is delivered. Myrtle's utter lack of self-awareness made her seem more like a gossiping teenager than a tragic ghost. She wasn't just a ghost, but rather someone who seemed desperately trying to relive her high school days, much to Harry's growing unease. Harry naturally was horrified by her suggestive remarks. His face, which was prone to turning red under pressure, turned an even darker shade of crimson as Myrtle fluttered around him. He stammered, trying to finish his task as quickly as possible. The more he tried to hurry, the more Myrtle seemed to enjoy the moment, as though her attention was exactly what he needed. As a 14-year-old boy already feeling the weight of the tournament's challenges, Harry was ill-prepared for Myrtle's flirtations. Yet this scene, for all its awkwardness, was a testament to the humour J.K. Rowling wove into her stories. The awkwardness was heightened by the contrast between Harry's discomfort and Myrtle's childlike enthusiasm. While Harry, facing the trials of the Triwizard Tournament, was dealing with life-and-death situations, Myrtle was obsessively fixated on something far more trivial, yet bizarrely important to her, Harry's attention. It was a surreal moment where the weight of the magical world, full of dark and dangerous creatures, was momentarily forgotten, replaced by something so mundane and relatable that it could only be described as funny. Here was a ghost with the emotional maturity of a teenager who could not understand why Harry wasn't flattered by her attention. The scene grew even more comical as Myrtle, in her desire to be around Harry, began to hover closer and closer, almost as though she were competing for his attention in the same way any teenage girl might. But there was no denying that she was a ghost, forever trapped in her own lonely existence. She may have been alive once, but her obsession with Harry made it clear that she had never really moved on from the days of her schoolgirl crush. Myrtle's behaviour could have easily been seen as desperate if it weren't for the comedic element Rowling expertly added. She seemed so desperate for any interaction, even a fleeting one with a living person, that she completely misread Harry's body language. She was oblivious to his attempts to flee the scene. Instead, she lingered, continuing to sigh dramatically and comment on how handsome he was. The humour was not in what Myrtle said, but in how she acted, so far removed from any normal understanding of a crush. There was something almost tragic about it, but that tragedy only made her actions funnier. Myrtle's inability to understand the awkwardness of the situation made it impossible not to laugh at the sheer absurdity of the moment. When looking back at the Goblet of Fire film adaptation, it's clear why this scene didn't make the cut. The movie focused heavily on the dramatic aspects of the Triwizard Tournament and the growing tensions in the wizarding world. There was no time to delve into the lighter, more humorous moments like Myrtle's awkward flirtations with Harry. The film had its own pacing to maintain, and while Myrtle's antics added a layer of charm to the book, they could have easily been seen as distracting in the midst of the high-stakes action. The film needed to stay focused on the plot, its forward momentum, leaving Myrtle's moment of comedy behind. However, the fact that this scene was omitted from the movie does not diminish its place in the book. It served as a small but important reminder that even in a world of dark magic and powerful wizards, there were still humorous human moments that could offer relief from the tension. Harry's blush, Myrtle's awkward advances, and the bizarre nature of their interaction highlighted the fact that even in a magical world, characters still dealt with normal, everyday awkwardness. In the end, Myrtle's flirtations with Harry are not just a humorous diversion, they serve as a reminder of her unique place in the Harry Potter universe. She was not just a ghost doomed to haunt the bathroom, but a character with her own quirky personality. And it's this depth of character, coupled with her hilarious obsession with Harry, that makes her so memorable. The film may have chosen not to portray this side of Myrtle, but in the books, it was these little moments that made the story feel all the more alive and human. While the darker and more intense elements of the plot carried the story forward, it was the small, funny moments like this one that gave it heart and charm. Number 22. Draco Malfoy turned into a ferret. In the vast world of Harry Potter, there are countless moments that have left a lasting impression on readers, some of which were either skipped or altered in the movie adaptations. One such moment, particularly cherished by fans, is the hilarious scene from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire when Draco Malfoy, the infamous Slytherin, is transformed into a ferret-like creature. This scene not only exemplifies the wit and absurdity of J.K. Rowling's writing, but it also highlights how the films, despite their accuracy in many aspects, missed an opportunity to showcase one of the most absurdly funny moments in the entire series. In the book, Draco Malfoy, as usual, taunts Harry Potter with his biting remarks and arrogance. The scene unfolds in the midst of the Tri-Wizard tournament, where tensions are high and competitors are facing off in dangerous and difficult challenges. Malfoy, who has always been a thorn in Harry's side, mocks him again. But as Malfoy sneers at Harry, something extraordinary happens. A sudden intervention, unexpected and comedic, takes place in the midst of Malfoy's cruelty. Professor Gilderoy Lockhart, ever the oblivious and self-absorbed figure, is nowhere to be found when needed. Instead, it is a different figure who steps forward to handle the situation. The true identity of this person, however, remains hidden under a much more familiar guise. Barty Crouch Jr., who had been secretly impersonating Professor Moody, the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, makes his entrance. But it is not his authority as a teacher that draws attention. No, it is what he does next that cements the moment in fans' hearts as one of the funniest in the series. With a quick flick of his wand, Crouch transforms Malfoy into something utterly ridiculous, not a toad, as might be expected in a magical prank, but a fluffy, white ferret. The sight of Malfoy, the smug, arrogant Slytherin, suddenly reduced to the form of a small, helpless creature, is absurd and unexpected. The book describes how Malfoy, now a ferret, scurries around in his new form, his body now entirely fur, with his distinctive features distorted into something comically small and animalistic. What makes the scene so funny, however, is not just the transformation itself, but how it unfolds afterward. As the small ferret, helpless and confused, continues to squirm about, Barty Crouch Jr. takes great pleasure in the chaos he has caused. With a grin, he begins tossing the ferret, Malfoy's ferret form, into the air, catching it, and then tossing it once more. It's as though he's playing with an over-enthusiastic kitten one who has lost all sense of dignity. The book goes on to detail how Crouch continues to toss the creature up and down, each throw more ludicrous than the last, before finally sending it scurrying down the trouser leg of Crabbe, one of Malfoy's cronies, with the intention of frightening him. The absurdity of the situation is not lost on the characters in the scene. The students, who have gathered to watch the drama unfold, are frozen in shock and surprise. Even the professors, who are typically the authority figures in these matters, are unsure of how to respond. They hesitate, unsure of whether they should intervene in this playful display of magical chaos. The scene creates a moment of awkward tension where the proper response is unclear. Do they stop this nonsense or do they let it unfold? In the book, the scene is presented with such vivid detail that it becomes not just a magical moment, but a humorous spectacle that challenges the seriousness of the Triwizard Tournament and its surrounding drama. Fans of the books often cite this moment as a perfect example of Rowling's ability to inject humor into otherwise intense or serious situations. The fact that Draco Malfoy, a character known for his haughty demeanor and constant bullying of Harry, is transformed into something as harmless as a ferret is a moment of poetic justice, albeit a humorous one. However, in the film adaptation of The Goblet of Fire, this scene is, unfortunately, greatly condensed. The visual humor, the absurdity of Malfoy's transformation, and the playful tossing of the ferret are all omitted in favor of a much quicker moment where Malfoy simply turns into a ferret for a split second. While the film still includes the transformation itself, it lacks the extended comedic sequence that made the scene so memorable for readers. The filmmakers clearly felt that the scene didn't add enough to the plot to warrant such a prolonged comedic moment, opting instead to move the story along quickly. It is this decision that has left many fans feeling disappointed. The book's version of this scene was not just a light-hearted gag, but a deeply satisfying moment in the narrative. For Harry Potter fans, the image of Malfoy, a figure of constant antagonism, being reduced to a small, frightened animal, was a moment of sweet, albeit absurd, revenge. It was a moment of catharsis for both Harry and the readers as they witnessed Malfoy's typical cruelty turned into a comical spectacle that showed him as the powerless figure he truly was at that moment. But the humor of the scene isn't just in the absurdity of the transformation or the tossing of the ferret. It also speaks to the way that power and authority are handled in the magical world. Throughout the books, characters like Malfoy are often seen as figures of authority due to their wealth, status, or family lineage. Yet in this scene, the power dynamic is flipped on its head. Barty Crouch Jr., who is impersonating a respected professor, momentarily becomes the one in control, and with a mere flick of his wand, he reduces the mighty Malfoy to something less than human, a creature to be played with and mocked. The scene also underscores the playful nature of magic in the Harry Potter universe. While the series often portrays magic as a powerful and dangerous force, it can also be whimsical and comical depending on how it is wielded. In this case, the magic serves to strip away Malfoy's self-importance, making him the object of ridicule rather than the source of it. The humor lies not just in the spell itself, but in the way it highlights the absurdity of Malfoy's persona and the eventual dismantling of his arrogance. There is also a sense of poetic justice in the transformation. Draco Malfoy's cruelty toward Harry, Ron, and Hermione has been a consistent feature throughout the series. He taunts and belittles them, often using his family's wealth and status as weapons. The ferret scene therefore can be seen as a fitting comeuppance for his behaviour. He is transformed into something powerless, a creature who is subject to the whims of others, and in this way the scene represents a small but satisfying moment of retribution. Ultimately, this moment in the Goblet of Fire stands as one of the most absurdly delightful scenes in the entire Harry Potter series. Its absence from the film adaptation is a missed opportunity, one that could have added an extra layer of humour to an already beloved story. The book's version of this scene is a perfect example of J.K. Rowling's ability to blend the magical and the mundane in a way that makes the fantastical world of Hogwarts feel relatable and full of surprises. While the films brought the Harry Potter series to life with stunning visuals and epic moments, it is in these smaller, often overlooked scenes that the books truly shine. The Malfoy ferret incident is a reminder of the unique charm of the original texts, where humour, magic, and character development often went hand in hand. It is a scene that fans will continue to cherish for its absurdity, its wit, and its perfect embodiment of the magical world Rowling created. Number 23. Harry gets a quill stuck to his lips. In the world of Harry Potter, the magical battles, the towering castle, and the powerful wizards often dominate the focus. But amidst all the grandeur, J.K. Rowling masterfully weaves in moments of humour and humanity, offering us glimpses into the everyday struggles of the characters. One such instance, albeit brief, involves Harry Potter, rather awkward and human moment with a quill in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, a scene that was notably absent from the film adaptation. In the book, Harry finds himself caught in the midst of an emotional storm. He is overworked, stressed, and overwhelmed by the pressures of being the chosen one. His life seems to be spiraling, with no escape from the relentless demands placed on him. With the Ministry of Magic attacking his character, the weight of the world presses down on him more heavily than ever. Amid this chaos, a seemingly trivial incident occurs, but it reveals much about Harry's character and his state of mind. It starts innocently enough. Harry, sitting at his desk attempting to do his homework, becomes more and more frustrated. The enormity of the task ahead of him, preparing for the trials ahead and grappling with the minister's constant persecution, becomes too much to bear. His thoughts are disjointed, his focus fractured. In a moment of complete distraction, he knocks over his ink bottle, causing it to spill. But it's not the spilled ink that captures attention, it's what happens next that is both comical and incredibly relatable. In a subconscious, almost robotic motion, Harry grabs the quill and, unaware of the ink-soaked end, proceeds to shove it into his mouth. Unnoticed by him, the quill becomes stuck to his lips, its wet, inked tip clinging stubbornly to his skin. He doesn't realize this right away. It's only when he begins to struggle with the quill, trying to remove it from his lips, that his friends, Ron and Hermione, catch on. The sight of Harry, a usually composed figure, failing to remove the simple object from his face is both absurd and delightful. Ron and Hermione, who are sitting nearby, first watch in confusion, unable to fully grasp what is happening. The absurdity of the situation eventually dawns on them, and they begin to laugh. It is one of those rare moments in Harry's life when he is not the center of some great mystery, nor is he the one heroically battling against dark forces. Instead, he is simply a teenager, fumbling with an object in a moment of stress and distraction. It is a moment that breaks the tension of the book, offering a refreshing contrast to the otherwise dark and serious tone of the story. For Harry, the scene is nothing less than humiliating. His expression is serious, his determination evident as he struggles to free the quill from his lips. He is not laughing, in fact, there is no trace of humour in his demeanour. The awkwardness of the moment only increases as he attempts to detach the quill, which sticks even more stubbornly, his attempts to solve the problem only exacerbating the situation. To an outsider, it's funny. To Harry, it's just another complication in an already complicated life. The humour in this scene is derived not from the absurdity of the situation alone, but from the fact that Harry is so caught up in his own thoughts, his mind so scrambled with everything happening around him, that he doesn't even notice the most obvious of problems. He is a young man, thrust into an adult world far too soon, dealing with responsibilities he never asked for, struggling with his identity and purpose. Yet in this moment, he is just a teenager, overwhelmed by the chaos of life, unable to focus even on the small things. Ron and Hermione, too, are caught off guard by Harry, rare moment of clumsiness. They have seen him face the darkest of creatures, but seeing him helplessly struggling with a quill is a sight they are not used to. It's a moment of vulnerability, one that shows a different side of their friend, the boy who always has to be brave, the one who shoulders burdens too heavy for his years. They laugh not out of malice, but because the situation is so human, so normal. It's a brief escape from the horror and drama of their everyday lives. This moment also highlights the strength of Harry, his friendships with Ron and Hermione. Despite the constant pressure Harry faces from the wizarding world and the weight of his destiny, he is not alone. These two friends are with him through thick and thin, sharing not just the life or death struggles against Voldemort, but also these smaller, more human moments. They see Harry as a person, not just as the hero they have come to follow. Their laughter is not just a reaction to the absurdity of the moment, it is a reflection of their understanding of Harry's humanity, his vulnerability, and his struggle. It's interesting to note that while the scene works so well in the book, it was never included in the movie. The films, in their race to condense the vast, intricate world of the books into a limited time frame, often had to make choices about what to include and what to leave out. Scenes that offer deeper insights into the characters' personal lives, moments that reveal their flaws and their growth, were sometimes sacrificed in favor of advancing the plot. As a result, many of the more humorous, humanizing moments, like the one with the quill, were omitted. But for those who have read the books, this scene remains one of the most memorable moments of humor. It's not about magic or danger, it's about Harry being human. It's about showing him not as the hero who can defeat the Dark Lord, but as a young person struggling with the weight of the world, trying to hold himself together, even in the most ridiculous of circumstances. It's about a quill, a bit of ink, and a moment of unintentional comedy that reveals just how much Harry, despite all his strength and bravery, is still just a teenager, trying to make sense of everything around him. This scene, so simple yet so profound, offers a rare glimpse into Harry as character, a side of him we don't often see in the midst of battles and prophecies. It's a scene that serves as a reminder that despite the weight of the world on his shoulders, Harry is still capable of laughing at himself, of finding the humor in a situation that would otherwise be lost in the seriousness of his life. The quill may have been stuck to his lips, but it was a moment that allowed Harry to reconnect with the most basic of human experiences, the ability to find humor even in the most trying times. And so, while the movies may have left out this moment, it remains an enduring piece of the larger tapestry of Harry's journey. A small, seemingly insignificant moment, but one that says so much about the young man at the center of it all. Number 24, feeding Norbert mandarins. In the world of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling's writing is rich with details that balance both whimsy and danger, often using humor to lighten tense moments. One such moment, which was sadly omitted from the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, is the absurdly comical scene of Hagrid feeding his dragon, Norbert, mandarins. This moment in the book highlights both Hagrid's well-meaning yet often misguided approach to caring for his pet, and the growing sense of danger surrounding Norbert, a creature that was far more than just a little darling. Hagrid's dragon, Norbert, was a Norwegian ridgeback, a breed infamous for its fierce temperament and fire-breathing capabilities. But to Hagrid, Norbert was more like an oversized puppy than a creature capable of raising an entire village. He'd nurtured the dragon in secret, convinced that the little creature, despite its size and fiery tendencies, was simply a misunderstood infant in need of affection and attention. This care, while well-meaning, was both comical and perilous, as Norbert, despite being young, was already showing signs of his destructive potential. The scene where Hagrid attempts to feed the dragon mandarins using a baby bottle, no less, is an absurd juxtaposition of tenderness and danger. The image of Hagrid, a towering half-giant with a wild beard and a heart of gold, gently cradling a dragon in his arms, trying to coax it into eating fruit from a bottle, is both humorous and deeply telling. Hagrid, ever the soft-hearted giant, truly believed that with enough love and care, Norbert would grow to be a harmless creature. Yet this tenderness is met with typical dragon behavior. Norbert, frustrated and agitated, bites, spits, and tries to burn everything around him. Hagrid's naive belief in Norbert's harmlessness, coupled with the dragon's violent reactions, created a comedic scenario that showed just how out of his depth Hagrid was. The contrast between the gentle care Hagrid exhibited and the violent, uncontrollable nature of the dragon made for a scene that was both hilarious and endearing. The absurdity of a baby dragon, potentially capable of turning a person into a charred crisp with a single breath of fire, being treated like a newborn baby, created an entirely unexpected type of comedy that could only come from Hagrid's unique perspective on the world. For Harry, Ron, and Hermione, the scene was both perplexing and comical. They had already seen how Hagrid had managed to keep the dragon hidden from the authorities, but now they were forced to witness his attempts to care for it as though it were an oversized infant. As they helped Hagrid with Norbert, trying to keep the dragon from setting fire to the room, the absurdity of the situation was not lost on them. Yet they all had a soft spot for Hagrid, and this strange, dangerous moment only deepened their bond with him as they saw just how far he was willing to go for a creature he cared about. The dragon, on the other hand, was far from grateful for the care it was receiving. Norbert, despite his small size, already exhibited the fiery temperament that would later define his species. He was difficult to handle, hissing and snapping at anything that came too close. The small dragon, struggling to adjust to his new life away from the wild, reacted instinctively to the overwhelming environment around him, His attempts to bite and burn everything within reach painted a picture of a young creature at odds with its own nature, making the situation even more absurd. The humour in this scene wasn't just about Hagrid, his overprotectiveness, or the dragon's fiery tantrums. It also revealed something deeper about Hagrid, his character. Here was a man, a giant in both stature and heart, who cared deeply for creatures, even those that others might find too dangerous or frightening to approach. His unconditional love for Norbert was touching, even if it was misguided. In a world full of magical creatures, dark wizards and terrifying beasts, Hagrid, its ability to see the good in every creature, no matter how dangerous, was both heartwarming and, in this case, ridiculously funny. The book's portrayal of Hagrid's relationship with Norbert is a perfect example of how Rowling balances humour with underlying themes of care, responsibility, and the dangers of overestimating his ability to tame nature. Hagrid's view of the world, where every creature deserves a chance and every problem can be solved with kindness, is both noble and naive. His relationship with Norbert, as portrayed in this particular scene, exemplifies both the charm and the chaos that followed Hagrid wherever he went. Meanwhile, the comical nature of the scene was enhanced by the setting and timing. The trio's covert mission to help Hagrid feed the dragon took place in a hidden space, which added to the tension. There, in a room littered with dragon-related paraphernalia and surrounded by the constant threat of discovery, Hagrid attempted to care for his pet as though it were an oversized puppy. The fact that the dragon was growing larger and more unpredictable with each passing day only added to the comedy of the situation. The scene also served to highlight the differences between the characters. While Hagrid approached the situation with childlike optimism, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were more aware of the potential consequences of having a dragon in their midst. Yet they couldn't help but be swept up in Hagrid's enthusiasm and affection for his pet. They could see how deeply Hagrid cared for the creature, but they also understood the danger it posed. It was a delicate balancing act between protecting Hagrid from himself and trying to make sure that Norbert didn't end up burning down the castle. Although this scene was cut from the films, its inclusion in the book serves an important purpose. It showcases the enduring theme of kindness versus danger that runs throughout the series. Hagrid's unshakable belief in the goodness of every creature, no matter how dangerous, is a cornerstone of his character, but it also illustrates the dangers of treating every situation with the same naive optimism, especially when dealing with creatures that can cause massive destruction. The scene, in all its absurdity, ultimately reveals Hagrid's vulnerability and his tendency to put his trust in his love for creatures rather than in practical solutions. Moreover, it serves as a prelude to the future events involving Norbert. The dragon, as dangerous as he was, would ultimately become part of Hagrid's ongoing relationship with magical creatures, showcasing Hagrid's ability to care for the most unusual and hazardous beings. The scene with the mandarins is an early comedic example of how Hagrid's love for creatures, though admirable, is often ill-timed and misplaced, setting the tone for many future adventures involving him and his magical companions. It's a shame that this delightful scene never made it to the screen, as it encapsulated much of what made the book so special, a mixture of heartwarming humour, absurdity, and a touch of danger. In a story filled with epic battles, dark wizards, and high-stakes quests, it was moments like these, where the most unlikely characters found themselves in ridiculous situations, that helped give the Harry Potter series its distinctive charm. Through Hagrid's attempts to feed a dragon mince from a bottle, we are reminded of the lovable, imperfect giant who, despite all his faults, always tried to do what he thought was best. Number 25, Harry tries to do homework at Sirius S. Place. In the fifth book of the Harry Potter series, The Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter finds himself at number 12, Grimmauld Place, staying with members of the Order of the Phoenix. It's not the most comfortable environment for anyone, especially not for a young wizard with the weight of the wizarding world on his shoulders. One would think that being in a secret hideout, away from the hustle of Hogwarts, would offer Harry some respite from the stresses of school and the ongoing war against Voldemort. However, a particular scene from this book vividly illustrates that Harry's life is anything but calm and quiet. The scene unfolds with Harry sitting in the dark, musty living room of Grimmauld Place, trying to focus on his homework. Harry is attempting to write a school essay, a seemingly mundane task that any student would dread. But for him, this moment should have been an opportunity to escape the chaos of his everyday life. Instead, as Harry tries to concentrate on the assignment, the house around him becomes a noisy, frantic distraction. At first, there is the incessant flapping of wings from Buckbeak, Sirius Black's loyal hippogriff. The creature's wings make an almost deafening noise as it flaps them constantly. Its presence in the room adds a level of unpredictability and tension. Buckbeak is hardly the kind of companion that a tired teenager needs while trying to work. Every flap of its wings seems to disrupt Harry's already fragile concentration, making it impossible for him to focus on the task at hand. Buckbeak, with its proud, majestic appearance, is certainly an imposing figure, but in this moment it becomes a symbol of the chaos surrounding Harry. Next, there is the unrelenting muttering of Creature, the house elf. Creature is a deeply unpleasant creature with his constant grumbling and curses under his breath. His presence only adds to the oppressive atmosphere of the house. His bitterness toward Harry and the rest of the occupants of Grimmauld Place becomes clear as he mutters darkly, cursing himself and anyone nearby. Harry, already frustrated and tired, struggles to keep his thoughts focused on his essay as the elf, sour mutterings fill the air. And then there is Sirius himself. As if the loud noises from Buckbeak and Creature weren't enough, Sirius Black, Harry's godfather, also becomes part of the disorienting storm of distractions. Sirius, who in many ways is a more youthful and carefree figure than Harry, whose other mentors, takes an almost childlike delight in disrupting Harry as attempts at work. Every few minutes, Sirius interrupts Harry, asking questions that have little to do with schoolwork. His voice rings out, full of energy and mischief, asking Harry about his opinion on Professor Snape and whether he thinks Snape is truly a friend or an enemy. Harry, already on edge and tired of the constant interruptions, can barely manage to write a single sentence before Sirius's voice breaks in once again. Sirius's behavior, playful and distracting, contrasts sharply with Harry's attempt to do something as normal as homework. The scene unfolds as a chaotic, almost comical spectacle, with Harry stuck in the middle of it all. It is easy to imagine the frustration mounting within Harry, who is trying to write about something as mundane as his schoolwork, while surrounded by so much noise and disruption. Yet, it is precisely this sense of chaos and distraction that makes the scene so memorable. In a world where Harry is constantly dealing with life or death situations, struggling against the darkness of Voldemort's rise, this brief moment of normalcy, his attempt to do homework, feels even more absurd in its incongruity. What makes this scene particularly interesting is that it highlights the way in which the characters around Harry all play a role in his life, often in ways that he doesn't fully appreciate in the moment. Sirius, while trying to lighten Harry's mood and offer support, is unknowingly adding to Harry's frustration. It's a reminder that despite his best intentions, Sirius is still a man who is emotionally scarred from his own tumultuous life. He is trying to connect with Harry, but he does so in a way that mirrors his own immaturity and unwillingness to take things seriously. This interaction is a stark contrast to the figure of the mentor who is supposed to guide and teach Harry. The chaotic energy in this scene also serves as a reflection of the tumultuous nature of Harry's life at this point in the series. He is caught in a whirlwind of emotions, grief over Cedric Diggory, each death, fear about the return of Voldemort, and confusion about his place in the fight against the Dark Lord. All of this is swirling around him, and the mundane task of completing homework in a house filled with chaos becomes a metaphor for the larger struggle Harry faces in his life. The scene is not just about homework, it is about Harry's attempts to hold on to some semblance of normalcy, to find a moment of peace in the middle of a storm. However, this scene is also an essential part of the book, humour. While the stakes in the Harry Potter series are often incredibly high, moments of levity like this one provide balance and relief. The humorous portrayal of Harry's attempts to concentrate amidst the mayhem offers a rare glimpse into the lighter side of life at Grimmauld Place. It is a moment of human imperfection, and it allows the reader to see the characters as more than just heroes or warriors in a battle against evil. They are people with flaws, quirks, and moments of normalcy. In the films, this scene is notably absent. The filmmakers, focused on the more dramatic elements of the story, chose to leave out the comedic chaos of this moment. While the films do an excellent job of capturing the tension and gravity of the story, they miss out on the more subtle aspects of the book, such as the relationship dynamics between the characters and the way humour is used to break up the tension. The decision to exclude this scene removes a moment of light-heartedness that helps to humanize the characters and add depth to their relationships. Moreover, the omission of this scene in the films also means that viewers miss out on an opportunity to witness the unique atmosphere of Grimmauld Place. The house, with its dark, eerie corners and strange inhabitants, becomes a character in its own right. In the book, the house is portrayed as both a place of safety and a source of frustration for Harry. The overwhelming sense of chaos that he feels while trying to do his homework is a direct reflection of the larger confusion and disarray in his life. By excluding this scene, the films miss an opportunity to further explore this dynamic. In the end, this scene is more than just a comedic moment. It is a reflection of Harry's inner turmoil and his struggle to find peace amidst the chaos. It is a reminder that despite the weight of the world on his shoulders, Harry is still a young boy trying to navigate a complicated world. In that sense, the moment when he attempts to write his homework while surrounded by distractions serves as a quiet yet powerful metaphor for the larger journey that Harry must undertake in the series. While the films chose not to include this moment of chaos, it remains one of the most memorable and relatable scenes in the book. It offers a glimpse into the everyday struggles that Harry faces, even in the midst of the most extraordinary circumstances. And in doing so, it allows the reader to connect with Harry in a way that is both humorous and poignant. Number 26, the Hermione Army joke. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, one of the most endearing yet overlooked moments happens not during the height of the Triwizard Tournament, but in the everyday banter between the main characters. It's a scene that perfectly encapsulates the quirky dynamic between Harry, Ron, and Hermione, showcasing their friendship in a way that the films, despite their vast appeal, left largely unaddressed. The incident occurs during a quiet, humorous exchange in the Gryffindor common room, long before the rise of the real Dumbledore's army, when Hermione's passionate attempts to educate her friends were still met with teasing and a playful dose of mockery. The scene is memorable because of its simplicity. It's not about grand gestures or life-altering events. It's about the little things that define friendship, the jokes, the poking fun, the ever-present undercurrent of affection disguised as irritation. At the heart of the moment is Hermione's attempt to impart some of her encyclopedic knowledge onto Harry and Ron, who, as usual, are more interested in anything other than studying. Hermione's efforts to give them a crash course in magical matters, especially the ones that might come in handy during the Triwizard Tournament, are met with her usual mix of enthusiasm and earnestness. But it's the way Ron reacts that really makes the moment stand out. He, as he often does, takes the opportunity to joke about Hermione's tendency to organize everything in her life, especially when it comes to matters of education. Quote, 63. Ron jokes, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Quote, 64. It's a teasing comment, one that Ron knows will get a rise out of Hermione, but also one that's rooted in affection. His words carry no malice. He's poking fun at her in the way only a close friend can. Is a moment of levity in a book that can sometimes get weighed down with the seriousness of the events unfolding around the characters. Hermione, of course, doesn't take Ron's teasing lightly at first. She pretends to be offended, huffing and puffing in mock indignation. She furrows her brow, scowls, and puts on her best impression of being put out. But despite the act, it's clear that she's not truly upset. The playful look in her eyes, the subtle upward quirk of her lips, tells a different story. She's used to Ron's teasing after all, and deep down she enjoys it. It's a testament to their friendship that Hermione can laugh off the comment even if she pretends to be annoyed. It's in moments like these that the essence of their trio, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, becomes so apparent. They are a group bound by mutual respect, shared experiences, and of course, their sense of humour. Ron's quips may often be at Hermione's expense, but it's clear that his affection for her is strong. He recognizes her strengths and the ways in which she can sometimes be a bit too serious, but he also appreciates the care and dedication she puts into everything she does. In many ways, Ron's teasing is a sign of how comfortable they are with one another. They've known each other for years, and their bond is so solid that they can joke, tease, and bicker without fear of damaging it. They understand each other, quirks, and love each other for them. In the context of this scene, Ron's remark about Hermione's army isn't just a joke. It's a subtle nod to the future. Long before Hermione leads the actual, quote, 66 in, quote, 67, she is already a natural organizer. She's always been the one to take charge, to guide her friends, and to ensure that they are prepared for whatever challenges lie ahead. The idea of a secret army of like-minded individuals training to defend themselves and learn new skills, seems in hindsight almost prophetic. But at this moment in the story, it is simply a joke between friends, a playful way for Ron to acknowledge Hermione's overzealousness in the realm of academics. For Harry, this interaction is a reminder of the normalcy he has with Ron and Hermione, despite the chaos that constantly surrounds them. Harry, who often feels like an outsider, whether due to his fame or the dark events unfolding around him, finds comfort in moments like these. The trio's light-hearted banter provides a brief respite from the weight of the world. It's not about saving the day or battling dark wizards. It's about the simple joy of being in the company of friends who, despite their differences, share a common goal and an unbreakable bond. In many ways, this particular scene serves as a microcosm of the dynamic between the trio throughout the entire series. Hermione is always the one with the plan, the one who insists on being prepared and knowledgeable about every little detail. Ron, on the other hand, is often more laid back, preferring to go with the flow and offering his sharp wit along the way. Harry, as the link between the two, often finds himself caught in the middle, sometimes indulging in Hermione's need for organization, and other times siding with Ron's more carefree approach. Yet it's precisely this combination of personalities that makes their friendship so strong. They complement one another in ways that make them stronger as a unit. This playful dynamic, the teasing and bantering that occurs in moments like these, is something that the films, with their focus on more dramatic storylines, don't always capture. While the films excel at showcasing the larger, life-threatening moments, they often gloss over the smaller, more intimate exchanges between the characters. The books, however, are filled with these moments that, though seemingly insignificant, contribute immensely to the depth of the characters and their relationships. The Hermione's army comment, for instance, may not have any bearing on the main plot of the book, but it reveals a great deal about the characters, personalities, and their friendship. What makes this scene even more endearing is that it highlights the subtle ways in which Hermione's leadership qualities shine through. Even when she's not consciously trying to lead anyone, she's not actively forming an army to fight dark forces, but she is, in her own way, preparing Harry and Ron for what lies ahead. Her meticulous attention to detail, her desire to teach and inform, and her unwavering determination to ensure that her friends are equipped with knowledge all foreshadow the role she will play in the larger battle to come. The joke about the army is a light-hearted moment, but it's also a glimpse into the future, into the moments when Hermione will take charge and lead the way, not just for Harry and Ron, but for a whole group of students in the fight against the forces of darkness. As much as this scene showcases Hermione's qualities, it also sheds light on Ron's character. He is the Joker, the one who makes light of things even when the world around him is anything but light. But his humor isn't just a defense mechanism, it's a way of showing his affection and his deep sense of loyalty. His teasing isn't meant to belittle Hermione, it's his way of showing that he cares for her, that he knows her well enough to make her smile, even if she pretends to be offended. It's a reminder that, despite the drama and the danger that often surrounds them, the trio's bond is built on a foundation of humor, trust, and respect. In a world as tumultuous as the one the characters inhabit, moments like these, moments of laughter, of playful teasing, are essential. They remind the reader that even in the darkest of times, the light of friendship can still shine through. They offer a brief escape from the weight of the world, a moment of normalcy in the face of everything that is threatening to tear the characters apart. And while the films may have chosen to leave this particular scene on the cutting room floor, it remains one of the most charming and telling moments in the book series. It is a small moment, but one that perfectly encapsulates the heart of the series. The unbreakable bond of friendship, strengthened through laughter, shared experiences, and mutual care. Number 27, Dumbledore talks about knitting. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, there is a small, often overlooked moment that perfectly encapsulates the eccentricities of Professor Dumbledore. This scene happens when Harry and Dumbledore visit Horace Slughorn's house, shortly before they embark on their quest to retrieve a memory crucial to Voldemort's past. As they wait for Slughorn to answer the door, Harry politely suggests that they sit down. But Dumbledore, in his usual whimsical manner, declines, stating that he prefers to keep himself occupied with something unusual, knitting. The casualness of the line is what makes it so charming. It appears out of nowhere, as if Dumbledore is just sharing an idle preference, an offhand comment, yet it reveals so much about his personality. In a world where wizards and witches often face dark, perilous situations, where battles with dark magic and the weight of destiny hang over their every move, Dumbledore's declaration about knitting feels like an unexpected breath of fresh air. It's not a matter of grand importance to the plot, but it is a wonderful glimpse into the subtle, quiet joys that Dumbledore takes in life. It is moments like this that make him feel not just like a wise, powerful wizard, but like a very real and relatable character, one who finds comfort and solace in the simplest of acts. The line also serves to further underline Dumbledore's characteristic eccentricity. The headmaster of Hogwarts, who is seen by most as a figure of immense gravitas, whose actions are often weighted with deep meaning, is also someone who enjoys what many might dismiss as trivialities. Knitting, in this case, becomes a metaphor for the quiet pleasures that Dumbledore embraces. His joy in the mundane acts as a counterpoint to the monumental pressures that he faces as leader of the Order of the Phoenix, mentor to Harry, and the one person who seems to hold the key to defeating Voldemort. This delicate balance is what makes Dumbledore such a rich, multi-dimensional character. The scene's humour arises not from the words themselves, but from the sheer incongruity of the situation. Here is a man who is constantly engaged in profound and world-altering tasks, and yet, in a brief moment of downtime, he is content to indulge in something as simple as knitting. There is no attempt to justify or explain it. It is simply a part of who he is. The scene provides an insight into the headmaster's nature, one who refuses to be bogged down by the weight of the world and instead chooses to embrace life as lighter, more humorous side. But this moment is not just about Dumbledore's idiosyncratic love for knitting. It also highlights something more important about the relationship between Harry and Dumbledore. Throughout the series, Harry is often in awe of Dumbledore's wisdom and composure. The headmaster is the figure who seems to understand everything, who knows more than anyone else and who always has a plan. But in moments like these, Dumbledore's vulnerability and his quirkiness break through, showing Harry and the reader that even the most powerful wizards are not immune to life's simple pleasures. It's an important lesson for Harry, who is often burdened by the responsibility placed upon him. Dumbledore's knitting is a reminder that even in the midst of their dangerous world, there is room for small joys and personal quirks that make life richer and more bearable. In the broader context of the Harry Potter series, this moment serves as a contrast to some of the darker themes that dominate the storyline. While much of the narrative is concerned with power struggles, betrayals, and the ever-looming presence of Voldemort, this brief exchange between Harry and Dumbledore brings a lighter touch to the narrative. It provides the reader with a reminder that even in a world overshadowed by darkness, the small, personal joys of life are worth celebrating. It's an important message for Harry, who is often consumed by the larger battles he faces. Dumbledore's knitting reminds him and us that there is more to life than the weight of destiny. The humour of the scene is subtle, and that's part of its brilliance. In contrast to the often high-stakes dramatic moments of the series, the knitting comment is small, understated, and utterly inconsequential to the plot. Yet it stays with the reader, leaving behind a feeling of warmth and affection for the character of Dumbledore. It's a gentle touch of humanity in a world that is frequently dark and unforgiving. Interestingly, the films chose not to include this scene in their adaptation of The Half-Blood Prince. The decision to omit this seemingly insignificant moment is curious, especially considering how much of Dumbledore's character in the films is presented through his more serious, authoritative moments. The films, in their quest to condense the plot and maintain a steady pace, often left out the smaller, quieter moments that provided depth to the characters. While the grand battles and emotional confrontations are important, the small details like Dumbledore's love of knitting that truly make the characters feel real and grounded. The omission of this scene highlights the difference in how the books and films portray Dumbledore. In the books, he is a man of great depth and complexity, not defined solely by his role as a mentor or a leader. He is someone who finds comfort in small things, in seemingly inconsequential acts. And it is this very complexity that makes him such a beloved figure. Dumbledore's brief mention of knitting also offers a stark contrast to the more sombre moments in The Half-Blood Prince. The book is filled with heavy themes: the revelation of Tom Riddle's past, the tragic death of Sirius Black, the growing threat of Voldemort's return, and Harry's personal struggles with love and loss. These themes weigh heavily on the reader, and Dumbledore's comment about knitting offers a small but much-needed reprieve. It reminds us that even in the midst of all this darkness, there is room for simple pleasures and the comfort of everyday activities. It's a reminder that not everything in life has to be about grand, world-altering events. Sometimes the smallest moments, like knitting a scarf or sitting quietly, can offer the greatest solace. In many ways, Dumbledore's knitting also speaks to his own personal philosophy. Throughout the series, he is often depicted as someone who values love, kindness, and the small, everyday moments that bind people together. This small, quiet moment in The Half-Blood Prince is a perfect reflection of that philosophy. It shows us that Dumbledore is not just a figurehead or a leader. He is a person who knows how to find peace in the little things, in the quiet acts that bring joy without the need for recognition or reward. Dumbledore's love of knitting also serves as a reminder of the importance of self-care. In a world that is constantly in turmoil, with its characters battling both external and internal demons, Dumbledore's knitting is a form of self-care, a way for him to center himself and find moments of tranquility amidst the chaos. In the face of so much pain and suffering, he seeks solace in the simple act of creating something with his hands, something that brings him comfort without any external validation. It's a subtle but powerful statement about the need to nurture oneself, even in the most difficult of times. The fact that this small moment is omitted from the films is a missed opportunity to showcase the full depth of Dumbledore's character. His eccentricity and warmth are part of what make him such a compelling figure, and this small detail would have added another layer to his already rich persona. It's a moment of quiet joy that speaks volumes about who Dumbledore is as a person, someone who, despite his immense power and wisdom, still finds peace in the little things. It's this kind of warmth and humanity that makes Dumbledore one of the most beloved characters in the Harry Potter series.